Well, hello there, and welcome to Faith, Culture and Politics in Australia with Mark. Today, I have the honour of having some really great guests on, two guests that have been on in plenty of times before, and we're going to be talking about a very important topic here in South Australia in relation to informed consent. Be a pretty powerful conversation, but first I'll just introduce quickly one of our guests here. And I'll bring that up on the screen here for you now. Elizabeth Hart has joined me before on other podcasts. So Elizabeth is an independent person investigating the vaccine industry and conflicts of interest in vaccination policy. And we're going to be talking extensively in regards to informed consent. The other person joining me today is Dr. Bruce Paix, who many of you may know from another channel, South Australia in Focus. And if you want to know a bit more about Bruce, obviously you can watch that video where I've interviewed him about some of the challenges he's been through in his life. But Dr. Paix is an Australian medical doctor and former military officer known for his career in anaesthesia and trauma, as well as later involved in public pushback in regards to the response to COVID. And you can obviously follow that on the channel, on the Rumble channel. And we'll just get into that and bring them on the stage now for you to be able to have a yarn about informed consent. So here we are. I'll just move us around a little bit here, and I'll put you guys up the top there and me on the bottom. Welcome, Elizabeth Hart, and welcome to Dr. Bruce Paix. Trust me, I am not a doctor. Nice little title there, Bruce.
Hello.
Welcome, guys.
Hello. How are you going?
Yeah, really, really good. Good to see. And we're going to be talking quite a sensitive topic, controversial. I'm going to see how long we can actually keep it up on some of the platforms that are out there that aren't very favourable to freedom of speech. But we are going to be broadcasting on other platforms that do support that. So we'll see how we go with the conversation and see if we can keep it up on those Google-owned ones anyway. So. So Elizabeth, this has prompted a bit of conversation because I've been following a lot of your work, and Bruce has as well, from your Substack, which is Vaccination is Political. But Bruce has known you for quite some time before as well, and you've got a Substack which is Vaccination is Political, and you've been researching for so many years. It started with pet vaccinations and so forth, and some of the things we're going to be talking about, obviously, informed consent's a really big one. And so if people want to find out more, they can obviously go onto that. But you've recently written some letters and emails, and you're constantly doing that. And do you just want to just give us a quick sort of rundown of what you've, what that's entailed and what you've gone through in regards to what you're trying to achieve here in Australia and potentially the world, really, because you're in contact with people overseas as well, extensively as well.
Yes, well, as you know, Mark, I have been writing letters for quite a long time, starting with pet vaccination back in 2008. And that was actually quite successful because I met with the regulator of pet vaccines, the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, back in 2010, I think it was, and also the Australian Veterinary Association. So that would be the equivalent of me meeting with the TGA and the AMA. So it was quite successful at the time. Choice magazine took it up, and I was really bringing to the fore over-vaccination of pets. And that is actually very relevant to consider with people, with human vaccination, because now human vaccination is going through the roof, that we've got this room-to-tomb vaccination schedule, and it's really come to a head with COVID, where things have just gone completely batshit crazy with COVID, where they were even talking about people being vaccinated every 6 months, and where they were setting up this annual revaccination where people were misled at first about being fully vaccinated after 2 doses, but then it led on to boosters. And it was also in response to what exactly? To something they call COVID-19, which is common respiratory symptoms rebadged, which weren't actually a serious problem for most people. So I don't get into the whole virus, not a virus argument myself, but whatever was going on, this was not the threat that it was being made out. And now we've got this situation where people's freedom to choose was taken from them with the threat of mandates. And as you know, I've been writing for quite a long time now. We actually have confirmation from the Australian government and from AHPRA that practitioners are obligated to get informed consent, and you can't possibly do that under mandates. So this is what's got to be all opened up now, what we've discussed today. My most recent correspondence is to National Cabinet. That's the sort of device I'm using now to sort of get these things on the record. And my first question was asking National Cabinet, did any doctors warn them back in 2021 that they wouldn't be able to participate in this because they have to get voluntary informed consent, and you can't get that under mandates? Now, we know that the doctors and nurses did participate because apparently, according to the government, over 75 million doses have been administered. So that's a hell of a lot of practitioners who collaborated with this. So my follow-up email now to National Cabinet is showing Chris Perry, who was an ENT surgeon, who was the Queensland president of the AMA back in November 21, showing him on the Today Show, aggressively intimidating the Australian public, dictating that they must get vaccinated, otherwise they're going to lose their job and participation in society. And it is just the most astonishing thing to watch. So maybe
and we've got that, and yeah, and I'm going to play that because we've got a couple of clips that we're going to go through, but I'm just going to pull it back just real quickly, because you did mention the federal government that was in place at the time, and it was a Liberal government, and we know that Scott Morrison was the Prime Minister in that, and he was on board very, very early in the stage, and happened to bring in a lot of stuff that's quite controversial in your eyes as well. So I might just to prep up before we get to Chris Perry, Elizabeth, I might just prep up and just get the viewers to see what our Prime Minister was thinking at that time, and then we'll jump in and have a bit of a yarn about Chris Perry. So I'll just bring this up now and play it.
Expect to be as mandatory as you can possibly make it. There are always exemptions for any vaccine on medical grounds, but that should be the only basis. I mean, we're talking about a pandemic.
You would expect it to be mandatory?
I would expect to be as mandatory as you can possibly make it. There are always exemptions for any vaccine on medical grounds, but that should be the only basis. I mean, we're talking about a pandemic.
It's like any vaccine. And as you know, I have a pretty strong view on vaccines, being the Social Services Minister that introduced no jab, no play. It's like any vaccine. And as you know, I have a pretty strong view on vaccines, being the Social Services Minister that introduced no jab, no play. What is important to understand with any of these vaccines, it does protect you, it does protect your family, but it also protects the community. And as is the case with any vaccine, there will be some individuals who, for quite precise medical reasons, there can be issues with a particular vaccine. They and their safety and their health depends on the vaccine's take-up more broadly in the community. That's how they get protected. They and their safety and their health depends on the vaccine's take-up more broadly in the community. That's how they get protected. And this is an important part of our vaccine strategy, not just on COVID-19, but more broadly. So we will be seeking its most widespread application, as we do with all important vaccines. So we will be seeking its most widespread application, as we do with all important vaccines. But Paul, you may want to talk about how those practices are followed, and we'll be doing that, of course, in partnership with states and territories.
Thank you, PM. So, of course, the first will be a voluntary call for people, and I'm sure there will be long queues, socially distanced, of course, for this vaccine. It will be incredibly welcomed by many. It will be the absolute ticket to get back to some sort of normal society and the things that we all love and enjoy. So it will be the absolute ticket to get back to some sort of normal society and the things that we all love and enjoy. So I think there will be a very strong take-up of this vaccine. Of course, there will be some that, for medical reasons, as the PM has said, may not be able to take the vaccine, but there'll be very strong campaigns to encourage people. And we've had experience before of linking vaccination with other programs, and all of those things will be looked at over time. There'll be very strong campaigns to encourage people, and we've had...
I appreciate greatly the work done by all the premiers and chief ministers and seeing those national vaccination rates get to where they are. We've got one more state to get through that gate. As it's a bit like, you know, getting the sheep through the gate and into the run. It's a bit like, you know, getting the sheep through the gate. And it's a bit like, you know, getting the sheep through the gate. What do you want?
So I don't think any Australian should be under any illusion, Bruce and Elizabeth, that the PM and everybody below him were fully on board with maximising the amount of the vaccine rollout as well. And Bruce has brought up a little clip there as well. Bruce, talk us into that one.
Yeah, look, if I may, you had both ScoMo and Paul Kelly running the old "you have to do this for someone else's benefit" line here. You know, they both said there'll be people who can't get the vax, so it's your job to get it so as they're protected. And this cartoon from England showed that beautifully. We were all coerced into taking something we didn't need, the great majority of us, on the grounds that if you don't do this, you're responsible for killing grandma. And I don't know any grandparents who would put their grandchildren in front of them as a protectant. It's meant to be the other way around, surely.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, so there definitely wasn't any shortage of telling people that that's the way it's going to go. And even Paul Kelly hinted at that. We've had other programs where we've got people on board, obviously talking about the no jab, no play, and you've obviously talked into that as well. Elizabeth, did you want to have a bit of a chip in around that that clip there, Elizabeth, or did you want me to throw up the one from Chris Perry next?
No, that was a very important clip, Mark. You did a good job putting that together, actually. It's quite amusing. That it all gets to the fact of informed consent, that people were being misinformed and disinformed by the government. There was fear-mongering going on. This means that nobody could give informed consent. Nobody has given valid consent to these injections, not even the people who were talked into really wanting them. Nobody could possibly give informed consent because they were told so many lies and then they were coerced into it. And that's tugging at the heartstrings there that ScoMo did by saying you have to do it to protect everybody else. I'm sorry, that does not work at all. You cannot make people have injections to supposedly protect somebody else. And the idea of children being injected to supposedly protect old people is absolutely abhorrent. I've published a Substack on that recently, where this really came out of England in June 2020. There was a Laws Committee meeting, and Peter Openshaw from Imperial College London and Ani Akbar, they were presenting to this Laws Committee, and they were actually saying that that the children will be vaccinated to supposedly protect the elderly. They were announcing it, and they were already doing it with flu vaccination. And what was astonishing was that the people on this Laws Committee didn't bat an eyelid. Because these experts are speaking, this is the thing, we've got this deference to authority all the time, that people haven't got the nous to just question them. It's like they've been trained not to question the experts, and it's like we need to wake people up. Common sense.
That's exactly what they've been trained to do. They've been trained to follow orders, including all my colleagues.
Yep, exactly. Following orders.
Now, I'll put this one up for you, Elizabeth, because this goes back more than 2 centuries. So I looked up the Hippocratic Oath, and here's a relevant part of the Hippocratic Oath. It says, the doctor, I will follow that system of regimen which, according to my ability and judgment, I consider for the benefit of my patients. For the benefit of my patients. There's nothing in there about the greater good or grandma. It is the doctor's responsibility to treat the patient, not society and not somebody else. So this is a basic ethical principle that's been accepted for 2,000 years, and we threw that out the window in order to protect grandma, apparently.
Yep.
It's that individual patient at the time. It's not the whole community. It's the patient in front of them. That's their responsibility.
Absolutely right. And we'll hear a bit more about this because obviously we're going to unpack that quite a bit more because Chris Perry talks into this very much himself. So do you reckon it's time? We'll just play this first clip from Chris Perry. What do you reckon? We'll unpack it from there.
If you're not vaccinated, it's going to be very, very hard to maintain a job, to be able to go anywhere. You know, people having weddings are going to have to weed out the unvaccinated. The pubs and the clubs are going to have to, you know, find out whether people are vaccinated before they allow them in. Otherwise, their businesses will go bankrupt.
Yep. So what do you reckon on that one?
What do you think, Bruce?
Well, that sounds like coercion to me. So again, I looked up the Nuremberg Code because the world got together after the Nazi atrocities and the Nuremberg trials, at which I might add several senior Nazi doctors were hung for their experimenting on helpless captive people such as Jews, gypsies, etc. And following that, the Nuremberg Code was produced. And whilst it hasn't been signed by every country in the world, in fact, it hasn't been signed by any of them. It's not that sort of international treaty, but it's an accepted code and Australia accepts it. And we know that the COVID vaccine rollout was an experiment. Greg Hunt admitted that. So here's what the Nuremberg Code says about experiments. The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. So that's the first bit. And this means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, etc. So no coercion of any kind is what the Nuremberg Code says. Now, I noticed that the government and the consent guidelines took out the any kind bit and put in undue. So they fraudulently misrepresented what the ethical position was there. And they said doctors could coerce patients provided they didn't do it unduly. Well, the Nuremberg doesn't say that.
What does that mean, undue?
To get out of jail card, isn't it? Whereas
it's not going to
the
stand
Nuremberg
up.
Code says without coercion of any kind. Well, you tell me whether no jab, no job was coercion of any kind. You tell me whether pepper spray or locking up in your house or getting PCR tests up your nose every time you went to work or being locked up while the rest of the public is allowed out again sounds a bit coercive to me.
Well, it's obvious, Bruce. So why didn't the doctors call it out? What happened?
Do you remember early on when one of the first times I met you, Elizabeth, I remember saying at one point, I don't care if it is safe and effective. That's not the point. It's unethical because you are mandating something. And you threw up your arms and said, hallelujah, because you'd never heard a doctor say that. Now, unfortunately, the great majority of my colleagues have no idea what ethics is, even though the APRA vaccination handbook talks about consent. Any medical defence organisation will tell you what the elements of medical ethics are. The average doctor has not got a clue. The only thing they know is they've got a 15-minute schedule. They can bill the patient for X, Y, Z. If they don't order enough statins, they'll be in trouble because they're getting audited, and the government is the one who's paying them. So they've basically got to do what the government says. And regarding COVID, all health practitioners remember getting the comply or else letter from APRA, because I got one, which basically said you have to go along with the government's vaccine rollout because if you question it in any way, that's unprofessional and there'll be problems. I had problems. Other doctors had problems.
Did you actually get a letter, or are you talking about the position statement, or are you actually talking about a separate letter?
All healthcare professionals got a letter from APRA, and I haven't queued it up, basically saying, yeah, you have to follow the government's line on vaccine mandates. And if you don't do that,
I would really like to see that letter. I've seen obviously the position statement, but if there's a letter addressed to them personally saying that, I would really like to see that.
Don't know if it was personally addressed, but it was sent to everyone. And just while you're chatting, I'm going to see if I can pull that up.
That might be the position statement, Bruce. I thought you also got a letter though from individually. I'm pretty sure we covered it in one of the shows, but that's all right. See what you can bring up.
It is the position statement. Yes, I've just.
Is it okay? It is a position statement. Yeah. So it's not a separate letter that was individually sent to you. I mean, we know that you were pushed back on for your challenging the Attorney General at the time here in South Australia and other things, and you got challenged quite heavily for things you were bringing up and raising. So we know that occurred.
Now, I don't see the difference between a position statement and a letter, because here it is. And can you see that on screen?
Yeah, that's yeah. Know about the position statement.
Let's just look at what they said.
It was a gag order. It was basically saying, get injected, get everybody else injected, and don't ask any questions or you're toast. So that means that these doctors could not possibly get informed consent because they weren't free to speak. That position statement is AHPRA dictating government policy.
Let's just look at what AHPRA directed to all health practitioners. So I've got a few bits outlined there. So in early 2021, so as the vaccine rollout was starting, National Board strongly encourage all registered health practitioners and students to have the full vaccine course unless medically contraindicated. Well, there's nothing about informed consent there, because you don't have to have a medical exemption. As discussed previously, consent rests with the patient. The patient has autonomy. Doctors don't issue exemptions. The patient is in charge of yes or no.
But
so that was the
Bruce, they do issue exemptions, and I've had arguments with Mark Hobart about this. Mark Hobart has aggressively turned against me for bringing this up, when I appreciate the fact that he wanted to give exemptions to his patients at the time to save them from having vaccination. But I was trying to explain to him, it is not within his personal gift to give people an exemption. It's his obligation is to be getting informed consent to have the injection, or to decline as they so wish. He does not grant their exemptions. And this is something that goes back to the government. And I think this exemption idea came in with no jab, no pay.
Yeah,
you know?
look,
So
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, but I did issue a lot of exemptions because that was the mechanism. Okay, let me just read a couple of other things that us doctors and others
it's very important to discuss this, Bruce. It's very important to discuss this, because I appreciate what you did and Mark did, but we've got to get to the fundamental problem here of this exemptions, that they should not exist.
Like I say, they don't exist. They cannot exist because there's no such thing as issuing an exemption to someone else. But let's not get caught up in the weeds there, because I want to read you a couple of other things here. We made the point that exemptions are invalid and the patient owns the right. So what did the medical practitioners get told? They got told that national boards expect all health practitioners to use their professional judgment and best available evidence. No, they didn't, because people like me who used my judgment got censored for it. And furthermore, in this position statement, they said any promotion of anti-vaccination statements or health advice which contradicts the best available scientific evidence or seeks to actively undermine the national immunisation campaign is not supported by national boards and may be in breach of the codes of conduct and subject to investigation and regulatory action. So we were all told, go along with it or you're in trouble, even though they're self-contradictory by saying doctors must weigh up the evidence. Well, that's exactly what I did. The only problem is if you came to the unaccepted conclusion, you were a problem and you got squashed. So,
well, how about Mark, we bring up the letter that I got from AHPRA. If you can just scan through those slides, the letter I got from AHPRA in September 21. That's it. That's the letter there, September 21. No, that's 2017. Go back to the previous one.
That was the position statement one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can make that bigger either though in the slideshow.
No, that's all right. I'm just showing there that I did actually get a letter, and the key part is highlighted there. So that was a letter that I got from AHPRA after I had written to them over and over again during 2021. I wrote to AHPRA and I wrote to the Australian Medical Association, the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, and the Royal Australasian College of Physicians. And I was pleading with them to acknowledge informed consent. This was before the mandates were put in place. I started doing this from June 21 because I could see what was coming. And I was writing to them. I was laying very detailed letters. I was laying it all out. And eventually I got that letter from AHPRA, September 21. And it's confirming, this is AHPRA is confirming, practitioners have an obligation to obtain informed consent for treatment, including vaccination. Informed consent is a person's voluntary decision about healthcare that is made with knowledge and understanding of the benefits and risks involved. That is September 21. That is just as the mandates are rolling out. We've got Andrews and his vaccinated economy in Victoria. How could this be happening? Why wasn't AHPRA speaking out and warning the practitioners, do not go along with mandates? How could they not do that? I have recently made a complaint to the Ombudsman about this, and I have got a response back where they're brushing this aside, but it's very important in that they acknowledge that I got that letter from AHPRA. And I think what's going to happen is that the practitioners are going to get thrown under the bus, because the Ombudsman has come back to me and acknowledged that I got that letter from AHPRA, and my reading of that letter is that they are going to throw the practitioners under the bus, in that they ultimately have the responsibility. They are the ones putting the needle in the arm.
Correct. And I hope they do. I hope they do get thrown under the bus. And let me just bring up your slides again, because I want to just discuss that bottom paragraph. So I made the point already that it's not the doctor who gives consent, it's the patient. Leave that aside. But in order to get consent, there's three things have to be done. So you've got to inform the patient, and that information's got to include the benefits of the proposed procedure, the potential risks of it, and that includes there not being any benefit, and the alternatives. And the alternatives include, well, I just won't do it. So that's what the doctors had to tell you in order to get informed consent. Here's the benefits of the COVID vax. Here's the risks of the COVID vax. And do you know that not having it is an option? Now, it was impossible for anybody to give that information at the time because we didn't have it. The benefits were unknown and were lied about. In fact, the benefits we were told were wrong. You know, remember, if you take the jab, you won't get it. Bollocks. They diluted that away. The risks were utterly unknown and still are and can't be known. You can't know the 10-year risk profile after you've been given the thing for 6 months. They just told us safe and effective. That was their consent, safe and effective. And finally, having done those things, you have to say to the patient, what would you like to do? Without, as we noticed, coercion of any kind. None of that happened. So that means that there was no informed consent for anybody who got an injection. And if I walk down the street with a needle in my hand and stab you as you go past, that's an assault.
Yep.
If I punch you in the street as you're walking along, that's an assault. If you and I climb into a boxing ring and have at it, that's not assault, because we both consent to that process. And that's why consent is important. I was an anaesthetist for 30 odd years. And before every anaesthetic, I would have to get a form signed by the patient called consent form. And that wasn't to stop you suing me if things went wrong, although that's what people think, because trust me, that doesn't work anyway. That was to stop you suing me for assault after I stuck a needle in you, or if the surgeon stuck a knife in you, because those actions are assault unless you consent to them. And the consent form is evidence that you consent to them. So given what I've just said, nobody in Australia was capable of consenting to a COVID injection because they weren't given those three things, which means everybody who gave a COVID shot committed assault, and everybody who received one was assaulted.
Yeah.
And what did the AFP do? What did the AFP do? They ran me out of town. They didn't bother, They didn't track down these thousands of cases of assault. No, they fitted up the doctors, the very few of us who said this isn't right. That's what they spent.
We need justice now. We need justice now, Bruce. So let's have a look. Can you just bring up that letter that Emma MacArthur wrote to Greg Hunt? You just flick through the slides. Yeah, that one. Just go back.
Back one?
Back. Yeah, that email there. I'll just give you the backstory on that. So this was in 2021. So you remember the AstraZeneca vaccines? It was coming out that blood clots were happening. And this is probably, I don't know, about June 21, around that time. And the practitioners were getting edgy. The AMA were getting edgy. Not so much because they were worried about people being injured, more about their liability protection. So they wanted to be assured that they would have liability protection. So the Morrison government at the time, they put out media releases which were basically inferring that the practitioners would have protection for giving the COVID injections. That was the impression that was given. And my friend Emma MacArthur and I were talking about this, and we were wondering, how is this going to work with informed consent? You know, this blanket protection. So she wrote this very well-crafted little paragraph here, you know, and she wrote it to Hunt, and she was saying, please could you advise to what extent the Commonwealth COVID-19 vaccine claims scheme provides insurance and indemnity for the civil and criminal liability that would arise where battery and clinical negligence occur due to a failure to obtain valid informed consent. Now, if you can just go on to the next slide. Just go on to the next slide. Now, this is the letter that Emma received quite swiftly, I might say. She sent her email in November 21. She gets a response, you know, back in December 21. And this letter is now confirming, oh, actually, the scheme does not provide an indemnity for practitioners or insurers. That's interesting to see. It does, however, provide patients who have suffered, you know, that they can have a claim scheme. And also this letter very, very nicely also confirms informed consent should be obtained for every COVID-19 vaccination as per usual consent procedures for other vaccinations. And it also refers to the Australian Immunisation Handbook, which, as we know, lays it out about valid consent. So this letter that is sent in December 21 is confirming that they do not have blanket liability protection and they have to get informed consent. Now, that's December 21, and yet we know that mandates were in place. This is what I am cracking up about, in that this basic contradiction was going on all the time, that the government is confirming you have to get consent, and yet mandates are happening. And these mandates started, I might add, by the federal government. It was the AHPPC that got these mandates rolling. And to just give you quick background on that, this is important to think about. This go back to June 21. We know that the focus was on aged care workers. That the idea was, oh, aged care workers were working with old people. Old people are vulnerable, so aged care workers should get vaccinated. Now, the AHPPC, led by Paul Kelly, they had recommended against compulsory vaccination for aged care workers. And they put out this statement on the 4th of June, 21. On the same day, Scott Morrison, it's broadcast by the ABC, he wants to turn this over. He wants the HPPC to go against the HPPC advice. He wants to go against that advice, and that the aged care workers should be vaccinated. Now, that's reported by the ABC. The ABC don't give any appropriate commentary on this because he's seeking to overturn the medical advice. This is important. And then on the 28th of June, it's announced by National Cabinet that it's going to be compulsory for the aged care workers to be vaccinated. And on the 29th of June, the HPPC, they make this recommendation. So that now is a rubber stamp of a political decision. It's not a medical decision. And this is what got the ball rolling on mandates. Once that happens, because you've either got informed consent or you haven't. You can't have informed consent for some people and not for others. So when they did that for aged care workers, then it all started for medical workers, disability workers. The HPPC were making those recommendations. So that's the federal government's committee making those recommendations. And that opened the floodgates. And then we have the states putting in place their mandates. So that's the fundamental problem of those mandates. That's what we've got to address. And it's happened now what we've got to bring National Cabinet to account for this, and the fact that National Cabinet was in place. So many people say that this was not, a legitimate body. Where was Cabinet? Cabinet seems to have disappeared into the background. It's National Cabinet's running the show. And now there's other important information to consider now. If you could go back to the first slide there, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
No, the first slide.
Very first one.
Yeah, first slide. That one. That's the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. There's a nudge unit they have, the Behavioural Economics team of the Australian government. And this was worked, they were working with the Department of Health and Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And they had come up with this report for the Cabinet in around July, August 21. And it was sort of devising means of how we're going to get people vaccinated, because they wanted people vaccinated. And so they came up with this idea: providing vaccinated people with personal freedoms and restricting the freedoms of those who aren't is likely to drive vaccine uptake. That is blatant.
Wow.
That is just so blatant. A thing to do that in a free country. It's there in writing. I'm trying to get the report. I put in an FOI to get that report because that was published in the Australian. Now, how come the Australian got access to that report, but the people don't get access to the report? This is a major issue, and this is what we've got to get talked about. My FOI has been declined twice now. I'll be trying again, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, it speaks for itself, the fact that they're trying to suppress it. But the main point
Elizabeth,
is in the Australian. Yeah.
Elizabeth, not only did virtually no doctor question the ethics of coercive treatment, but when they did go to the experts, they actually asked bioethics experts whether there are any ethical problems about that. And look what it says. Experts in bioethics say attempting to apply the code, the Nuremberg Code, to COVID-19 vaccines is incorrect and misleading. So not only did none of us stick up our hands and say this is unethical, the experts told us it's not a problem because ethics didn't apply to that.
Who are these bioethics people? They generally useless as far as I can see. It's all been
This was a
Sydney
bioethics professor said that.
It's all been stitched up, hasn't it? It's obvious
Correct.
for anybody. Again, we have to challenge these experts that have been put in place in inverted commas. These people are just put in place, and we have to start using our own nous and challenging this stuff.
Well, here's what the experts said. There was no mandatory vaccination program in Australia.
Wow.
Just a strong encouragement. And they agreed that patients receive and must complete a consent form as part of the process.
What's
they
the
have
date
debunked.
What's the date
what's the date on the story? 2021, mid-2021, middle of
June.
the rollout.
Well, the mandates hadn't really come out then. The mandates were, for widespread mandates came out later in the year. It was in June was when they were starting to roll out for the aged care workers. So this is what these people don't know what they are talking about. If you are being threatened, you will not have your livelihood and you will not participate in society. You will not travel. You will not go to restaurants. You will not go to the cinema. You will not do anything. I mean, I've had this put back on me because I challenged the Attorney General about this, because I was questioning, was this against the Australian Constitution, with doctors being conscripted basically to do this? And then the letters eventually, one of the letters eventually I got back was saying, people had a choice. I mean, this is the sort of thing they're trying to wheedle out of this now. Well, I'm sorry. You put the mandate.
Well, full free informed consent really can never be given under a mandate of any way, shape or form. And we've heard them clearly. We've had all of them clearly say that it's compulsory. It's going to be compulsory, and people were told they had to have it. And even if Bruce, there's obviously conjecture about signing off exemptions, but even when someone like Bruce and I have talked about this on our show before, is that when he did sign off exemptions, we've had a chief health officer that actually totally ignored those exemptions and chucked them in a bin, and that's highly illegal and unethical in itself. You reckon, Bruce? We discussed.
So I issued. Leave aside whether I needed to. That was the mechanism. So I did proper 30-minute health consults with quite a few concerned SA health workers, mainly female paramedics, who said, I'm a bit worried about the future fertility risks here. I don't want to do this. And I didn't just give them Kellogg's box exemptions. I had half-hour consults with them where I went into their medical history, their family history, all that sort of stuff. And then I went through the things that are required to consent to a vaccine, so benefits, risks, and alternatives. And if at the end of that process I said to them, I don't believe this is in your best interest, I wrote them a note that said, I don't believe this is in your best interest. I recommend you don't do this, which was my way of writing an exemption. And they took them to work, and they then got sent to the SA Ambulance Chief Health Officer, who then sent them, I understand, to the State Chief Health Officer, Professor Spurrier, who binned the lot of them. So what you've got there is another unethical practice. So you've got a sacred therapeutic relationship between a patient and a doctor. And then you've got a doctor who doesn't know the patient, hasn't seen the patient, just throwing out the results of that interaction. You know, it'd be like me writing a script for something and the patient taking it down to the chemist and the chemist going, no, I don't think that's a good idea, and tossing it out. And by the way, chemists did that during COVID because I wrote scripts for hydroxychloroquine early on, and the chemist just refused to fill them. And I asked the chemist, I said, what's going on here? You know, you're not the doctor, I am. I wrote a valid script. Why didn't you fill it? And they said, we were instructed by the Pharmacy Guild not to fill these scripts. So again, there was unethical and probably illegal behaviour all around. But if you were like me and stuck your hand up and said, no, this is wrong, this is immoral, unethical, illegal, what happened? You got multiple visits from the police, not to investigate the crime, but to tell you to pull your head in. That's what happened.
And this is what's got to all come out now. This has got to all be exposed and talked about. The whole thing, this is the problem. Again, I've been doing this for 17 years, so I know what's been going on. We've been suppressed from discussing this. You know, people like Julie Weiler, who did a PhD in this area, she was persecuted mercilessly for years to shut her up. And she kept going. But it was horrible. But she is in public. The Murdoch media, which we know has got massive conflicts of interest in that it's involved in vaccine research via the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, and it was involved with the Doherty Institute. There's so much to be unpicked here. And we've got no mainstream media to do this. We have to do it ourselves because the mainstream media are complicit in the whole thing. So there is so much to come out. Yes. You know, like as I say, Judy, you know, encountered so much. It was just horrible what was happening in public. She was being pursued by the Friends of Science in Medicine. These people were going after her to try and shut her down. These people are connected with the scientific establishment, and they were shutting down debate. And what this means now for informed consent is that they were suppressing discussion, which means there is no informed consent because they were shutting things down. I was getting shut down as well. I was more low key because I was quietly doing my letters, but I would try and leave comments on appropriate forums. You simply just get censored. The Conversation website, which is a research website, which is involved with the universities and research industry. I used to leave lots of comments on there on articles. This was around 2012 to 2016, and eventually I simply got banned. This is what this is the science trademark. They simply shut people down. So this has all got to come out. You know, it's all got to come out. But how this was happening, because if we'd been allowed to speak properly back years ago, this COVID thing wouldn't have happened. It's because of all that suppression that this is a catastrophe. This has cost this country billions and billions. I think we're in $1 trillion debt. How COVID has cost so much in what it did to the economy, what it did to people's lives. It's absolutely astonishing what has happened. And it was because of the suppression of discussion on vaccination policy, taxpayer-funded vaccination policy. There is so much to be exposed, and so many people are keeping the lid on this, and we've just got to get the lid blown off it. And the major part is this, as a medical profession, what is wrong with the medical profession that they are incapable of speaking out? Now, people would say to me, oh, well, the poor old doctors were in the same boat as everybody else. They would lose their jobs. It becomes between losing your job and injecting somebody who is under coercion. I'm sorry, you do not inject somebody who's under coercion. That is assault and battery. And
Well, I'm afraid the vast majority did. The great majority of my colleagues failed that test. They have no idea about ethics, and they proved they're not doing their job as doctors. They're not there to get the best outcome for the patient. They proved that, probably not one doctor in 100 actually realized that they could not do this and said, damn the torpedoes, I'm just not doing it. They either were utterly unaware that they were failing, or they just didn't care and did it anyway. And we had on the show a week or two ago, we had that vaccine researcher who ran a definitive study in the US showing the difference between health outcomes in vaccinated and unvaccinated kids. And then he refused to publish the study. And he was caught on hidden camera saying, well, it's stunning, but I can't possibly publish that because my job's on the line. Well, this is the same for every doctor who just rolled over and did this. Either they knew they shouldn't be doing it, but they could be bought for the price of their salary, or they just weren't even capable of thinking it through and going, no, this isn't ethical. I'm not doing this.
Exactly. And
why is it so bad that they haven't got the ethical nous within them? I mean, I watched Ahmed Malik, Ahmed Malik in the UK with the podcasts, and he was a former surgeon. He was discussing this with Sam White, who was a doctor who got hammered pretty early on. And Sam was saying the doctors don't get any education on vaccines. People are told, speak to your doctor, and they have no clue that the doctors don't know anything about this subject. You think of Rogers versus Whittaker, they are not an expert. They're not qualified to get consent. And a nurse is certainly not qualified to get consent. So this is what's got to be exposed. But Sam was saying they were basing in England. They were just basically taught the schedule, and that was it. They didn't get the opportunity. Correct. And he was saying if they'd had an opportunity to talk about it and about the ingredients in vaccines and aluminium and all these sorts of things, that would have generated a conversation. But no, it's just a sort of rubber stamp on that they would. Another person who's been spoken about this is Heidi Larson. Heidi Larson's the director of the Vaccine Confidence Project. And in December 2019, she was at the WHO Vaccine Safety Conference, and she gave the plenary lecture. And she probably wasn't expecting that somebody like me was going to watch it and transcribe the whole thing. And she was saying in that lecture that the doctors don't get any training, but maybe half a day of training. And then, because she's the Vaccine Confidence Project, which is vaccine marketing, and she wants them to be the front line of pushing these products, but at the same time, she's admitting they're not qualified to do this, actually. It's a whole shambles that has to be exposed, that has been covered up so long because the vaccine industry has been calling the shots literally and shutting us down from exposing it all. And now it all has to gush out.
100%. And, the whole... Go. Sorry, Chris.
The rot started 50 years ago with Medicare, I'm afraid. And I was once told by a military colleague of mine, you work for the person who pays you. And since the 70s, since Goff and Medicare, the person who pays the doctor is the government. And the government calls the tune. So doctors have performance benchmarks.
They've been conscripted then. In the Constitution, they've been conscripted to follow the government line.
Read the script, write the script is what the doctors are paid to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to think when I was in med school, the lesser end, the less prestigious end of medicine was general practice. And, the high flyers aspired to go into a specialty because once you're in a specialty, by and large, you get paid more, you get more income, more kudos, more respect, more prestige. What I didn't realize is that might be at an individual basis. That's not what it's like in business. So far and away, the most prestigious or valuable part of the profession to capture is the GP because they're the ones who write all the scripts. Yeah. The drug companies don't really care about orthopedic surgeons much because they're not very good revenue generators, are they? The ones who are valuable to industry are the GPs, and they get relentlessly targeted with all these propaganda about this drug and that drug. And the government gets conscripted to actually audit them and make sure the doctors are doing what they're told. So we got this during COVID. You know, you got audited for how many jabs you were given. And just look at statins. They know how many statin prescriptions are given GP rights. And if they're not writing enough, they'll get a please explain letter. They're not there to treat patients. They're like traffic cops who are told you didn't book enough people today. You better go out and issue some more tickets.
Wow. Just astonishing, isn't it?
And they do. And they do.
Arvid and Sam were talking about this as well, that in England they have pop-ups, and it's telling them that, oh, this person recommend this and recommend that. I mean, I had the experience lately, if you were reading, I put it on my Substack, that I got a call from my local surgery. Lucky me, I'm 65 and I now qualify for a shingles vaccine. So I was gobsmacked to get this call because I thought they might be ringing about a family member. But no, it's a nurse. A nurse is cold calling me from a surgery. So she's using her authority as a nurse to say, oh, lucky you qualify for the shingles vaccine. The presumption is I'll just go in and have it. But of course, you can imagine what I was saying to her. This is a nurse cold calling me. This is a telemarketing campaign. So I then wrote to the surgery and complained about this and about informed consent. How is this informed consent and what have you? And the managing partner of the practice came back to me, Jeff Martin, I think it was, and saying, oh, yes, we believe in informed consent and what have you. They are just marketing now. The general practitioners, the Immunisation Coalition is providing their continuing education. The Immunisation Coalition, which is funded by Pfizer and Moderna and GSK and Merck. It's just unbelievable what's going on. And proudly on the Immunisation Coalition's website, it is funded by, it's an association with the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. It's there, blatantly there in public, but most of the public don't know about this. And the other thing is the Immunisation Coalition is a charity. How does that work? It's working on behalf of the vaccine industry, and also on the Immunisation Coalition website, it also says there's no advertising on this website. When the whole thing is advertising of vaccine products. They have just roped in the medical profession to this. They've got their RACGP. What is going on in that organisation? The Royal Australian College of General Practitioners is absolutely appalling. And this is, you might notice, Mark and I are on an email group at the moment. And there's been some discussion, because I'm saying, and Judy Wylam is saying, we need to go back to no jab, no pay that came out in 2016, that law. That is the fundamental basis of what's happened with no jab, no job in COVID times. And I was asking you the question, how did no jab, no pay ever get up? Because it was obvious then this is coercion. I couldn't understand this. And this has generated conversation, as in Judy was saying, the NCIRS, why didn't they make a submission about that bill, the no jab, no pay bill? And I'm also asking, did the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners make a submission? Because I can't find it. I made a submission at the time. I made a submission which was obviously focusing on informed consent. But I've been speaking to other people, and we can't find a submission from the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. Now, they should have been foremost in making a submission to say, we can't do this because we cannot inject people under coercion. So I'm now putting out, if you know anybody, Bruce, I want to find out, did the RACGP make a submission against that no jab, no pay bill? And if not, why not? And if they did, I want to see it. Because the Royal Australasian College of Physicians did make a submission, and they did qualify things by saying that they didn't really support that idea of incentivizing people. So at least they did some sort of idea of the right thing. But this is what we've got to do now. We have to go back to no jab, no pay. Don't forget, this was Scott Morrison. He was the Social Services Minister at the time. He was the one who got that bill up that he's so proud of now. And he was also the Murdoch's pet. He had lunch with the... Sorry?
I'm guessing they could have just rung this professor of ethics and asked if it was all right.
Well, I'm sorry, it's all wrong, because he was in bed with Murdoch. They had lunch in 2015. It was the Murdoch media that was running that aggressive no jab, no play campaign,
Yes.
and not disclosing, as far as I'm aware, that they had a conflict of interest in being a corporate partner with the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, which is involved in vaccine research, for goodness sake, and it was it was tripartisan support. Richard Di Natale was the head of the Greens then. You remember the ex-doctor, and he was in the pocket of bloody SAVN and Friends of Science in Medicine. What's his name? Bill Shorten, Labour. Tony Abbott was the leader of the Liberal Party at that time. When the law came in, Turnbull was the Prime Minister. So all of that lot were all roped in to support this, goes through the Parliament, and there's nobody anywhere apparently who's got a clue about this, that you can't get informed consent if you do this, people. I've had a couple of conversations with Ahmed Malik in the UK, a couple of his podcasts talking about this. And when I was explaining to him no jab, no pay, straight away he jumped up and he said, that's not informed consent. That's incentivizing and disincentivizing. He could get that straight away in England. He had no idea about this. And yet in Australia, where were the doctors? All the doctors had been beaten down because they had the example of John Peace, who got hammered for a question. And there are statements from AHPRA prior to COVID-19, it's been going on for years, where it's been made clear to doctors and nurses, don't question vaccination or you're finished. So they have created this climate. So you've got a climate where the people who are giving the injections, the doctors and the nurses, they have been threatened. You cannot question that product that you are giving. And there's nobody anywhere who had the courage or the common sense to speak up and say, you can't do that. We've got to be able to question the products that we're giving.
Well, there was about half a dozen or a dozen, but we can see that they were all heavily persecuted for doing so, and lost their careers and everything. Bit like Bruce, but there's only a few, but the rest of them all self-censored, and they and they didn't have any moral fibre to push back on that, because if even if half of them pushed back, they wouldn't have gone that far. But all of them put their careers and money and mansions and Mercedes in front of the ethical ethical behaviour of just lining their patients up for a government project at the end of the day. And regardless of whether it was safe and effective, even if it had been safe and effective, everything that's occurred here is ultimately illegal and unethical in my eyes, because you cannot, and this is the point you're trying to make, Elizabeth, you can never ever give full free informed consent under coercion and a mandate. And that's as simple as that. And the more the public hears this and understands this, the more and get more outraged about it, then things will change. Until then, these people seem to have the control, because doctors aren't standing up, and now they wouldn't anyway, because they've done the deed. So they're all going to go, well, I'm not going to put my neck out and put my head above the parapet, because they're probably dealing with bloody guilt or whatever. Who knows?
Well,
Mark, I don't think they're guilty. Mark, we have a socialist medical system in Australia. We've had since the 70s. It's the same in England. It's the same in Canada. And to have a socialised medical system, you've got to have socialists running it. So doctors have been increasingly chosen from the left side of politics. So they're collectivists. They believe in the greater good. And they do believe it's okay for one person to suffer if it means that a bunch of other people benefit. And I think that mindset they're selecting for it now. You don't just get into med school based on your marks anymore. You've got to write a social justice essay and tick some LGBTQ furry box, or there's got to be, they're streaming people into the profession who have the right way of thinking, and they're showing
that is for sure. Because I'll be wondering, they must be selecting people who are compliant, or that they can will toe the line.
And they're getting taught at medical school by lecturers who are from the same stream. We've all heard of the long march through the institutions. So they've selected all their academic staff to have this sort of collective bent, and they select doctors who'll have it, and they work in a system where it's necessary. The government pays you. We live in a socialist country. We have a socialist healthcare system. If you can't work within that system, like me, you get shown the door. You self-identify, You know, COVID was a huge test for medical ethics, and anybody who stood up and said, I'm not doing this because it's unethical, was told, thank you for letting us know, there's the door.
And the other ones were taught by people like that bioethicist that you brought up before that said the Nuremberg Code wasn't the COVID wasn't covered on the Nuremberg Code because the bioethicist told you, and they're probably the same people teaching the new doctors, so they're crazy.
And we saw this with Dr. Dan on the other channel. He genuinely seems to think it's okay for a greater good mindset. And lots of my colleagues would be the same. They genuinely think, okay, you got to break eggs to make omelets. They don't know that for 2,000 years, the doctor's job has been to treat their patient, not their patient's relatives or society or the greater good. And they think that's okay. And it's not. Collectivism is never okay because it goes against the autonomy bit of patients' rights. You own your body. You get to choose what's done to it, put in it, whatever. You don't get to participate in a greater good program that hurts you because someone else benefits. The state can't turn up and rip a kidney out because somebody else needs it.
Yeah, there you go.
You own your body.
Not yet. I hear they're doing it in other countries, but not here. What do you reckon we remind the audience who might be forgetting that, they might have felt not coerced or whatever? Let's just remind them of the kind of language that was used. What do you reckon? I'll just throw this other clip up and we'll remind everybody of what was said.
Oh, they're crazy not to get vaccinated. Life will be miserable without being vaccinated. You won't be able to get any... You won't be able to hide. You won't be able to get a doctor to sign off that you got an exclusion because there's quite set rules on that, and doctors will be audited to see every one of their exclusions will be looked at very carefully. They'll get fined. They can get struck off. The patients who tell lies can be charged with fraud. There's a whole pile of issues, whole pile of problems if you try and get around the system. It's going to be very hard to maintain your employment if you're not vaccinated. You won't be able to go anywhere for any entertainment. So by all means, get vaccinated. You've got another week where you can get double vaccinated before the 15th to 17th of December when it's definitely coming in. And there'll be proof that you've been vaccinated, firm proof. You'll be asked to show going into most venues. So get vaccinated, otherwise you're going to have a very, very lonely life and you're not going to be able to maintain your employment.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who've been feeling relaxed about this might be enough the momentum to get them vaxxed. Do you think that then means you could see that opening date, the 17th of December, brought forward?
Oh, I don't think people can be relaxed about it anymore. Their livelihood is on the line.
I think that clip really just encapsulated the last 40 minutes of conversation that we've had. Like we've discussed, you, Bruce and Elizabeth, we've covered so much ground in the last sort of 40 odd minutes, but that video right there just encapsulated everything and it hits home the point of everything that's been discussed. What do you think?
That is huge because he's not only threatening the people, he's threatening the doctors. See how he's saying the doctors will be audited. He's putting the word out to everybody, toe the line. He is an ENT surgeon. Who is that man? He has got no more right than you or I or anybody to be demanding that people have medical interventions. How on earth was that allowed to happen? And it's the AMA. Well, bully for the AMA. Perhaps you'd like to play that other clip there, Mark, that you've got with him.
Yeah, we'll get this one up now and we'll kick that in as well and hopefully that'll play okay for me.
Rules with a clear line drawn in the sand between the vaccinated and unvaccinated.
We're joined now by the Queensland President of the Australian Medical Association, Dr. Chris Perry. Doctor, good morning to you. These are tough rules, aren't they, if you're not vaccinated? You support them?
Yes, we do. The AMA is the mouthpiece. Yes, we do. The AMA is the mouthpiece, the organisation that represents doctors. We know that 99.7% of our doctors firmly support vaccination and keeping the community safe. So when we talk for the doctors. So when we talk for the doctors.
So when we talk for the doctors. There you go.
We saw this during COVID. We saw the failure of every advocacy group to advocate for their members. So the police didn't protect the public, the doctors didn't advocate for their patients, the unions didn't advocate for their union members. All of them got captured by government and turned into agents of the state, all of them.
Yep.
But that's
Yep,
important
100%.
because he's giving the audience the impression. The audience is thinking, oh, the AMA has got some sort of, they're behind them. Who is the AMA? They're just thinking this is an authoritative organization. It's just a gang of doctors. And it's a pretty small gang, I think, actually. Who are these people? It's a lobby group. It's a lobby group. And
It's a trade union.
Lobby group. Yeah. And so he is misinforming the public thinking that to obey this guy, it's got to be exposed. That man, the damage that was being caused by this, by making all these people having, how many people would have gotten the COVID injections if there hadn't been mandates? I suspect there are an awful lot of people who wouldn't have had that injection if they had been free to make a choice. But so many people got compelled that to be able to do anything, to work or travel or whatever, it is the most appalling thing. And I'm feeling like it's don't mention the war at the moment. It's like people are trying to suppress this. And there are all these millions of people around us who got injected, who don't actually understand what people like us who didn't get injected went through, that we were discriminated against, that it was like an apartheid, that we were living in a supposed free country and we were treated differently. While they could travel, we couldn't. This is minor, but I got banned by my golf club. It was just ludicrous. There were threats that were put on people, that people didn't want to get kicked out of their sports and being able to do anything. They would comply because they couldn't see any other option. They had all this oppression coming from the government. It was all for your own good. And not only for your own good, you were really made to feel guilty, as Bruce was pointing out earlier, that you've got to do it for everybody else, that collectivist idea. So this now, after all this time, we've got, this cannot be stifled anymore. It has got to be blown out, and we've got to bring these people to account. And that's the likes of the AMA and the RACGP and the National Cabinet. All of these people, they have damaged all of Australia. They've damaged people's personal autonomy and bodily integrity. Children were made to have these vaccines. I wrote to Nigel Crawford, who was the chair of the TARGI, and because it was out there early on that children weren't at risk. So I was saying, why are you vaccinating children? They were admitting it themselves. And now, according to government statistics, 2.3 million children have had a COVID vaccine. We saw pictures of Gladys Berejiklian in a gymnasium or whatever it was, over all the children that were getting injected, like Big Brother or Big Sister. It was unbelievable. Their kids were having to have the injections to sit their exams and what have you. It is unbelievable what's happened in this country without valid consent. It's an oppressive totalitarian regime. It was tyranny. And it still is tyranny because we're not getting accountability. I'm writing to this National Cabinet. Will they respond? They can police themselves, but it's going on the record. It's going on the record what happened, and it's going to come out somehow that they. And as I said, that ombudsman came back to me, and the way I'm reading it, ultimately, the people with the needle in their hand, they're the ones that did the action. And as far as I'm concerned, that's assault.
Yep,
absolutely.
And Mark and I have discussed this. We keep the receipts. I wrote letters to politicians. They tried to shut me up. In fact, when they really tried to shut me up is when I said, I've done this so as I've got the evidence that you knew. And when Nuremberg 2 comes around, you don't get to say that you didn't know. And that made them all extremely touchy. It got the Attorney General to send the police around to my house, tell me to pull my head in. It got my my federal member, Rebecca Sharkey. It got her chief of staff to absolutely scream down at the phone at me after I tried to get meetings with both my federal and state members, and they both refused. And at one point I said to one of the members, okay, well, I just want you to confirm that the member has heard what I wrote in my letter. They know what my concerns are. And the chief of staff said, yes, the member, Sharkey, has read your letter. And I talked about safety and ineffectiveness and all that sort of stuff. I don't think I talked about ethics. Sorry about that. So I wrote that and I said to the chief of staff, well, okay, that's great. Can I have some sort of formal response that says that the minister is aware of my concerns. And the Chief of Staff said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And I said, well, hang on, why not? And they said, well, we don't want you having evidence of that. So I said, well, funny thing is, I anticipated you'd say that. That's why I've recorded this conversation. At which point the Chief of Staff went absolutely apeshit and started screaming about the Telecommunications Act and illegal and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, actually, it's not. If you look at the Act, you'll find that it is legal to record a conversation between two people, provided A, at least one party is aware of the recording. So you can't eavesdrop on two people. But if you have a conversation with somebody, you can record it, provided somebody knows, and you do. And also that the recording is made for the purpose of making contemporaneous notes. So when I said that to the Chief of Staff, again, more screaming, screeching, arm waving over the phone. And I said, well, okay, alternatively, sue me. Then what? Then I'll make it public. And of course, I never heard anything further about it, but I did save the recordings and I saved them somewhere safe. So by the way, AFP, VicPol, SAPOL, if you want to raid me, you still won't get them because I got copies. I got a dead man switch. And you've said the same thing, Mark. If nothing else, we've got the receipts, and at some point in the future, you don't get to say you didn't know.
Yep, absolutely. We've got it all there. It's all on the drive, all publicly available for the stuff. Like same as Elizabeth, all her stuff's all written up there. All the receipts are there, so no one can ever say, no, we did not, and we did that. And again, coming back to being deplatformed, working in the disability sector and challenging for the people that I supported. I got banned off LinkedIn as well because I was challenging what was going on as a team leader. And LinkedIn and my director didn't like the fact that I was on there challenging, questioning, so I got totally deplatformed. So this is how it all worked. It's censoring, shutting people down, but this coercion thing is a massive thing, and we've even got it on film with Brenda Murphy, Paul Kelly, and Skerritt, all in estimates in front of Jackie Lambie, openly admitting that coming back to the point you made, that children never ever needed it because it didn't affect children. It didn't affect younger children. So it's all on record. These people can't. There's no out for them. There's no out. And most of all, that there was never this whole thing that you're pushing, Elizabeth, and it needs to go. It needs to explode globally. This whole, especially in regards to Australia, everybody was. Coerced, and there was no full and informed, valid consent. And you mentioned before, because I was going to bring this back up, is that even the people that ended up not being injured by these things, because we know that there is people that have, but that were the people, an appeal to the people that were coerced and mandated and didn't really want to, even if you didn't have any adverse effects. Your rights were violated just like everybody else, and you should be very, very angry, just like anybody else, even if they were the people that lost their job or the people that were injured, and God forbid those that lost their lives. The people that received it that were coerced and nothing happened to you, you should be just as angry as everybody else.
Yep. Absolutely. We were all politically injured. This is devastating for our society. We're supposed to be living in a free country. I mean, you talk about Anzac Day and what have you. What is the point of all this? Our freedoms were stolen by our own government. I'm living now a life of the persons. The government is what I fear. Our own government, which has been taken over by whoever's running the world right now. Our own government was not accountable. These people they're put in place, and maybe they don't even realize it themselves, but there's a uni party. This is not working for us. You try writing to a representative and trying to get a response back from these people. Now, whatever happens to any of my stuff, it doesn't matter. I've got 4 key letters. 4 key letters. I have 2 letters from APRA, one dated from 2017, which I got after No Jab, No Pay, which confirms that practitioners have to get informed consent, and a letter from APRA in September 21. There's Emma MacArthur's letter that she got in December 21. And I got the same letter because I wrote to the Albanese government when they came in, confirming the same thing. Those 4 key letters. It's simple, people. This isn't complicated. Informed consent is simple. Everybody is entitled to informed consent. Another key thing that has to be addressed is medical people themselves. Because when they go into medical school, they are subject to vaccine mandates straight away. So this is a fundamental problem of why they don't understand this, because they are mandated to get the vaccine. So they just don't get it. They just think it's for the good of everybody and everybody else will have to do this as well. And this is important. Jared Rennick, when the COVID was going on, he came out, he's well known as being talking about this, but even he sort of rationalized, that it was okay for medical people to be subject to mandates. No, that was very big mistake on Jared Rennick's part. And I've been censored about saying that by other people. And yet that's a very important thing to come out, whether, you think Jared's a good guy or not. It's a major mistake. It's like the exemptions.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yep.
Nobody can be mandated, because if you mandate anybody, it breaks the whole principle. Same with military people. They must not be mandated either. And a lot of this goes back to the US, because mandates have been so prominent in the US for school children in the States and for military people. And this is where we've got to go back. I think this is because, all this pandemic planning has been coming out of the US and the UK, the Five Eyes countries. This is what we've got to go back to. And I'm challenging people in the US about this as well. Even people like Aaron Siri. Aaron Siri, people look at him as a lawyer. He's had exemption cases and they boast about winning these exemption cases. So I'm saying you are actually embedding this whole problem by going along with the idea of exemptions. There should not be exemptions. That is it. And we need now accountability for what has gone on. So it's not just the medical profession, it's the legal system that's rotten. How can we live in a country where we've got a legal system that doesn't protect us from mandatory medical interventions, fair work, the courts? What sort of setup is this? I have brought this informed consent thing to lawyers and what have you. Nobody's effectively challenging this. It's a disaster. Lyndall Dean with Fair Work, she was bringing this up. She effectively brought it up. She got shut down and sent off for re-education. What a setup. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Explode. It is so bad. All of this damage has happened now. All these people who are vaxxed and thinking they did the right thing and it was good for everybody else, they have to find out, and I'm sorry, you were tricked. You were hoodwinked by your own government, by the doctors. All of these people did this to you. And if you don't want this going forward, and I certainly don't, it's got to be exposed. It's got to come out. And so if you mind, Mark, if you could bring up the last slide.
Hang on, let's bring that through. Yep. That one.
That's what it really amounts to. The Australian government confirmed to both me and Emma that informed consent should be obtained. And yet, this is what was happening. We had a sort of mafia standover tactics going on to people. You're going to be injected or you're not going to have a happy life. It was a protection racket. You get injected or else. And if you can just back up a bit, this is very important because I think there might be a lot of practitioners who don't know about this. Just back up there. Just one more, that one, just that one there. This is a form that I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but this is a fact sheet that was put out by the government. And I think it happened after Emma's correspondence with the government, because this came out in December 21. So remember, she sent her email in November 21. She gets a response back in December 21. And then, lo and behold, this comes out. A doctor brought this to my attention, actually. It's this curiously titled "Handling Consent Refusal by People Presenting for Vaccination," because that's the reality of what was happening. You've got, usually in an ideal world, people go to a doctor because, I've got a sore toe, I've got a broken ankle, I need medical assistance. They go seeking the help of a doctor for that assistance. But with vaccination, this is a whole new ballgame. This is a mass population intervention that people are dictated to have. And it's not necessarily in their best interests. So we've got a situation now where this is really up the ante, in that this is now mandated. People have been told by the media that, you will have to get this if a lot of the jobs were dictating that you have to have this injection, or if you want to travel, or all of this sort of stuff. So now you have this situation where the person is thinking, I've been told I have to have a vaccination, otherwise I'm not going to be able to do all these things. So you go to a doctor's surgery or you go to a vaccination clinic. You're not voluntarily doing this because you really want to. You're doing it because you've been cornered. You're like, I've got to deal with this. How am I going to deal with this? So it looks like you're voluntarily going there, but it's not voluntary. So now you walk into the clinic. Let's visualize this, what's going on. You walk in and you say, I don't really want to be here, but I've been mandated to get this. What should have happened immediately, and actually it should have happened long before this, the doctor or the nurse should say, I can't do this because I know you're coerced, so I cannot inject you. And this should have happened right at the beginning. And the leadership of the profession, the AMA, the RACGP, the RACP, the nursing colleges, they should have been the ones to have come out straight away and said, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. That's why I wrote to the National Cabinet just recently and said, did any doctor warn you we can't do this? So this is all going to come back onto the medical profession. This
is what you were saying, wasn't it? This is what you're saying. The whole thing is it comes back to them. They're going to be thrown under the bus, and as Bruce rightly say, they probably should, because the patient. I could only imagine. I mean, it was bad enough for me going. I'm actually not going through it, and I didn't have to go to a doctor because I knew I was never going to get a exemption anyway, right? But if you've got this person sitting there going, I've got my mortgage, I've got my, my family, I've got all this. They, in their mind, didn't have an out, but the vaccinator had an out by saying, actually, I really feel for you, and when you go back to your workplace, you may get terminated, but I cannot go through in giving you this because I can tell that you are under coercion through mandate and loss of that. I consciously and legally cannot do this for you, and you're going to have to work it out by going back to your workplace, and whatever comes out of it, or find another person and maybe go in there and don't mention to them that you're being coerced, because now that you've told me that you're under coercion, I cannot do this. And none of them did that.
I mean, didn't that ever happen? Didn't any lawyer organise this? The lawyers, I don't understand what they were playing at. If you just go back to that form again, just bring those forms up again. I call it a fact sheet, actually. Now, look at this fact sheet that's put out by the government. This is now covering the backside of the government. It is all going to go back on the practitioner. Handling consent, refusal by people, it's saying, can I vaccinate? This is giving an example to the practitioner, the doctor or whatever. Can I vaccinate a patient if they are mandated to receive a vaccination? A patient must provide informed consent prior to vaccination. And yet we know they can't do that if they're under a mandate. And it's saying if a patient has not provided informed consent, you should not vaccinate them, even if they are mandated to receive. It's there in black and white. The practitioners are toast. Just go on to the next one, or the other page I had with that. Yeah, and saying here, patient wants to debate topics around vaccines and vaccination. This is called discussion. And it's saying, I cannot engage in this conversation with you in a professional capacity. That is just totally wrong. That's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be talking about this. And again, it's so tortured. This is gaslighting. It is gaslighting to say, you've got to give informed consent, but you can't give informed consent because you're here under a mandate. And this is what's really got to come out. And what was wrong with the medical profession, that they were so under this yoke that they were not, as a group, they weren't able to just say straightforwardly that, no, we can't do this because that will be coercion. What is so rotten about the medical profession that they couldn't do that?
Yes,
they failed the test.
They did fail a massive test. Now, guys, I'm just conscious of time as well. I mean, we've covered a lot. I mean, it's if the audience doesn't get now where you're coming from, Elizabeth, and get behind the work that you're doing and jumps onto the your Substack and follows along what you're doing and gets encouraged to somehow get involved and push this around. So my biggest thing for everybody, if you're watching this and we're so heavily censored, jump onto Vaccination is Political, Elizabeth's Substack, and get behind her and follow what she's doing. But one of the other things, obviously, with me, and Elizabeth's out there talking to a lot of people, other podcasters, and I've got, a bit of a smaller platform. The biggest thing I can say to you is if you want this information to go out, you've got to hit like, subscribe, share the heck out of it, just send it through, because we know we're suppressed. I mentioned some platforms before that are heavily censoring this type of conversation and that, and the voices. So you've really, for the audience, my big recommendation is share the heck out of it, because it's going to be censored. It's Elizabeth's information and Bruce's voice into this must go out further, and these things need to be discussed, no matter where it leads us as a country, and no matter how much pain people end up with. And if you're a doctor and you've gone along with this, at some point you have to sit back and go, crap, find your your moral compass and your conscience and go, you know what, I've stuffed up, but I've got to be able to speak out. I think it's very unlikely, Bruce and Elizabeth, but and I just, obviously, Bruce, utmost respect for you as someone that has put everything on the line, and people that have been following me and our conversations on our shows would know how much you've gone through at the risk of standing your ground as a physician who has taken the moral route on this and the conscious the decision on this. So the other thing, as we're winding up, Elizabeth and Bruce, people know that I'm actually looking to put my hat in the ring for the state election here in South Australia. Now, I know the topic that you're talking about here, Elizabeth, it should be national. It's a national conversation, and it should be global. But I wanted to kind of finish up on a couple of questions for you both. So, one of them is, what do you recommend South Australian voters, because people will be watching this obviously in South Australia, should think about going into the next election about candidates? The questions, after watching this show and watching everything you've done, what sort of questions should they be asking potential candidates before March to make sure that they represent them ethically in regards to their free and informed consent in regards to these things? And what's your message to any candidate that might be looking to put their hand up for the March election here in South Australia?
Well, that's a big sort of question, really, because I'm just so disillusioned with the entire, voting system. It's like seeing people like you. It's great that you're doing this, but look at what you're up against. You're up against these major parties. In elections, they get paid a lot of money because of all the people that vote for them. They get money for each vote. And so, and they're entrenched, and it's like a uni party now. They just take turns. And it's like, we really have to have a conversation. And something that's really significant to me is compulsory voting, because as you might gather, I'm not really into compulsory anything. And this compulsory vote, you mention that to people and they'll say, oh, yes, people should vote, just like we should get injected to protect everybody else. It's the same idea with compulsory voting. And I'm thinking, no, you're voting, for your own demise here. You're being compelled to vote, even though people will say, oh, well, you can go into the ballot box and not, fill it in. No, it has to be out there. The principle has to be out there that you should be free to make a vote or not. In the UK, a huge amount of people didn't vote in the last election. The Labour Party got in with about 19% of the vote, and a whole lot of the electorate didn't vote. And we need to be pushing these conversations about why are people not voting? Why are people feeling disenfranchised? We have just not got a genuine system here. We are being played the whole time by this system that people are it's the same old thing that's going on, this adversarial system that we think there's some sort that we count. Our vote doesn't count for anything. The whole thing is ridiculous. I think Ahmed had a good talk with Neil Oliver recently about this. It's one of the recent podcasts, and it's just to really get some conversation going on this, because this system is not working for us. I know from writing to my own so-called representatives, they also, when they do their oath, the oath is to the king. It's not to us. So this whole system's rotten. And we need to get. What do you think, Bruce?
I can't disagree with you, but to answer Mark's question, if I've got a candidate in front of me, I'd probably say, does your party believe in individual freedom or big government? And explain to me how, and take it from there.
Yep. No, good to hear. Well, I'm bringing this this conversation to the public so people will know where I stand on a lot of these things. Obviously, I don't believe in big government, and so that's one thing for me. But anyway, I really genuinely, I absolutely take my hat off to you, Elizabeth, what you've been doing by, you're copping a lot of flack as anybody else that's pushing the boundaries and pushing back on a very entrenched $1 trillion business and model. And both of you, Bruce, we've discussed ad nauseum about the impact it's had on your life by standing your ground, and including me. I guess I lost my job and copped a lot of flack on that as well. So these conversations are massively important. So what I say to the South Australian community is, if this has resonated to you and you're as and I'm going to say pissed off as Elizabeth, Bruce, and myself are, then share it around. Share this conversation around as much as possible and get the conversations going. So. But that's about it for me, unless you wanted to finish up on anything, Elizabeth or Bruce, before we wind up. Is there anything else that you wanted to finish up on?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and Bruce. I mean, Bruce is, a rare diamond indeed. So it's great to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate it. I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't think we left much unturned, did we? So we covered it quite a bit. But look, I'm always open to obviously cover more. You're constantly writing, Elizabeth. You're constantly doing things. So if there's something that I can, help you promote again, as I always make a point of sharing all your stuff around because it's very important and people do need to know, because there's so many blips on the radar, right, that we could, and Bruce and I cover so many during our shows during the week, but you're focused on this one thing, and it's really important because you really unpack it, and it's really critical for people to be able to follow along, because you really do bring the receipts on everything that you're doing. So I highly encourage everybody to follow along with Elizabeth and the Substack. So good on you guys. Thanks so much, and let's get this out there and pump it around wherever we can, and we'll go from there. And feel free to stick around if you want to, but as always on this new channel, I do like to finish up with a bit of Christian blues, so I'm going to finish up with that now, guys. So hope you have an amazing evening. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much.
Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief for sure. He that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The porter openeth unto him, the flock hears his voice so sweet. I am the good shepherd, I lay down my life, I call my sheep, they know my voice. I lead them out, I give them light, eternal pastures, eternal choice. The stranger's voice they will not hear, they flee from those unknown. But I am the door, by me they enter, salvation is my own. The thief comes only to steal and kill, to destroy and bring to end. But I am come, they might have life abundant, full, I said. I am the good shepherd, I lay down my life, I call my sheep, they choice. The good shepherd gives his life. The hireling runs away. The wolf will scatter, but I stand near. My sheep are mine, I stay. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father. I lay my life, take it again. No man takes it. I have power. I am the good shepherd. I lay down my life. I call my sheep. They know my voice. I lead them out. I give them light, eternal pastures, eternal choice.